All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Leadership Blend live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice, and my co-host,
Simone Cherie.
Simone, don't start me. I'm not. Do not start me today. All right, so I'm not even going to go around the mulberry bush. You know this voice. You know this guy. You just haven't seen him in about a year? About a year?
Has it been a year?
Yeah.
It's been about a year. So you haven't seen him about a year, but he's always Blend family. So he's here today joining us to run his mouth and talk about what he's got going on. So introduce yourself for those that may not know.
You should know. What's good? It's Double R. I'm back in the building. Back with the fam.
All right. So,
Yes, Double R's an artist, so he had to go off and do his art as they do.
Yeah.
Isn't that like a typical thing? It's like a hibernation year. That
No,
everyone who makes music just
You
goes
are giving him a
away.
big excuse. That is not what was going on. But
What
okay.
was going on?
All kinds of stuff. You know, he
Oh.
stay on stuff.
Well, don't put his business out there. I don't know your business.
I don't care. In that time, he's been to what? Colorado.
Yeah.
He's been all over the world. So he has no excuse to not be successful and have a fresh insight at this point. Because anybody can live in the mountains with snow and stuff. Yeah, you should have a whole new lease on life.
Right.
So that he's done all that stuff. So we know he ready to run his mouth. We know you ready to torture me. So let's get into it. What's on the rundown?
We're going to talk about some new bills that have been introduced in Georgia. One wants to limit no excuse voting or mail-in voting. So we're going to talk a little bit about what that means, what that looks like. And there's actually 20 bills that have been introduced, all to try to tweak absentee voting. So this is a really big agenda in the state of Georgia. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about voting as a right. That's another one that's come up a couple of different times, and Democrats are definitely trying to get that done to make voting an actual right. We should also talk about the COVID update. We have crossed the 1 million vaccine mark in the state of Georgia, even though there was definitely some supply issues in the beginning, and there still are, but we should probably talk about what that means and what the mayor of Atlanta wants to do about that in terms of getting it to communities of color who are not getting it, and the other reasons they may not be getting them. And then you've got some entertainment updates, I think, that are really important. So we should cover that. We should cover that too, and then have a couple broader conversations, and then we're going to get into your EP that just came out and is very, very new. So we have plenty to do with an hour. Look at you all perky. Go ahead.
I mean, you start. What we starting with?
I want to start with Georgia. We are here.
Unfortunately.
So let's talk a little bit about that. We know that there was a huge turnout, incredible turnout, not just for the November election, but for the runoff. That was historic. Over 1.3 million people cast a mail-in ballot in November.
And we're now blue. Well,
Yes.
like you say purple.
I say purple.
Blue.
But yes.
Blue.
This is a competitive state for the first time in decades. And so
50 years.
yeah. 50?
Now, if we can just pack Stacey up and send her to South Carolina to do the same thing, we'd be doing something.
Well, so a lot of people have, especially a lot of Republicans, we know all the voter fraud allegations and claims that came from the White House and also several other pockets of the country, not just in the state of Georgia. There's a lot of oppositions to absentee voting and voting by mail. A lot of people feel like, when you show up to the polls, you have to bring your ID. And what are we doing to make sure that there's, secure voting that's happening by mail? And so 20 bills have been introduced just in the state of Georgia alone. One of them
On
is
voting?
on
Yes.
voting, on
Oh,
mail
good Lord.
in
This
voting.
is what we wasting our time on?
That's a lot of bills. Even for obviously they're not all going to move, but we'll see which ones will. SB 28 is the first one that we're talking about here, and so this requires a copy of a Georgia ID, whether it's a voter ID, a driver's license, a state ID number, to be presented, and 2 copies of it to be printed and mailed off with you. So let's logistically think about what that means. What this would basically require is that you have to submit a copy of your ID twice as you try to register to vote by mail and when you apply for those absentee ballots in the first place. So the reason why this is so funny is because I don't know how many of you own a printer. Do you own a printer?
I did. I don't really have a
And
use
so
for
you
one
don't
now.
own one now. Do you own a printer?
Nah.
I just got a printer like last year, and I was like shopping for a novelty item. I felt like I was looking for a DVD player. It was hard to find.
Why? They're
It was
not
kind
that
of
hard to find.
Well,
Walmart has a
it
whole
was more
aisle.
expensive than I remember. A. B. I just the thought of needing a printer. I just can't remember last time I needed a printer.
Wait, did you buy a printer or did you buy a 3-in-1 that has a scanner?
I bought yes.
See, how do I know
Yes.
that? How did I know
but
that?
most people don't have that. And then there's ink and all that. So anyway, people will have to figure out how to do that. You also have to consider that if this is something people have to do and they have to go online and request their little stuff, if it's not going to come by mail, that is. This would all be in a world in which it's not just coming to people's by mail. If they have to do all of that, that also means somebody has to have internet because they have to go to the website and download it. And we know that every area of Georgia does not have internet. There's a lot of internet dead zones in the state of Georgia, and that that plan is not changing anytime soon, to my knowledge.
So basically, let's just call this what it is. It's just another hurdle and yet another scheme to get people to not vote because they're still mad that they lost the election. Let's just call this what it is. That's exactly what this is. So now you're making it more inconvenient for me to absentee vote, which, by the way, won't stop me because I don't believe in absentee votes. I mean, I understand for certain groups of people, elderly people, things of that magnitude, but I will slap on the mask and did, not once but twice, to go vote. So do what you got to do. But this is just another ploy from the Republicans just to slow down people from voting. Minority communities, let's be real, minority communities, people of color, from voting because we don't like inconvenience. Let's just call it what it is.
Yeah, and a lot of young people too vote by mail, and find it annoying. Yeah, and find it annoying to have to physically be somewhere. We are in the middle of a pandemic, so technically everyone should have been a little worried about being in a large group.
It didn't stop us from going to the grocery store.
But
because we was hungry.
It's not
you
me.
slapped on a mask and went to the grocery store. You can slap on a mask to go vote.
I was Instacarting.
But what am I getting for voting?
Of course you were. Your voice being heard. We are not about to have this argument.
Yes, we are not.
We're not.
We're
not
but
doing
I'm
this
just
today.
saying, do you really think these young people care? Like,
actually,
in
they
real life?
did.
They prove
did.
they care.
They care this time, but if you make it more inconvenient than it already is.
Well, that's what we're saying. Everybody's going to feel that way.
And that's the objection. So, and some of the other bills that they're trying to pass are they're trying to prevent new residents from voting in runoffs. Meaning, right? They're also trying to ban the ballot drop boxes. So like, you know how you can do snail mail or whatever, but drop boxes were a big deal this year and they wanted them in certain locations. There's a bill proposing that we ban drop boxes so that everybody has to, like, I don't know, go to their county or whatever which defeats the purpose of putting vote on a piece. Anyway, so lots of different bills.
That's like doing Uber Eats and then you get charged $10 for a delivery fee. It's like, well, I
right.
might as well just go get it. If I'm going to pay $30 for the food, I might as well go get it.
Right.
The most offensive one to me is SB 73, and that is being proposed to ban nonprofits from mailing applications to voters. So
what?
I don't know if any of y'all are part of.
Now you know that's coming directly for Stacey.
Well, but think about like how many churches and like, you know, community organizations were like, listen, we want everybody to be able to vote. We will take care of this. Banning people from doing it for you, making everyone do it on their own is so ridiculous. Like literally stopping people from helping people is what it seems like to me. So that's
how is this? I guess my thing is, how is this stuff legal? Like, how does this not scream you're infringing upon my right to vote?
You
like,
can't
I don't
ask that
understand
question when the governor was like doing that. That's exactly what he did.
Well, okay, so Kemp did it, of course, to win his election. We all know. But after
and
that,
he also
didn't
faced
really...
a series of lawsuits, and some of them are still ongoing to this day. And he's 2 years into his
term.
Yeah, into his term right now. And he's already planning on running next year. Well, 3 years, I guess, because 2021.
Which reminds me, I saw an article. Apparently, they're starting to stop Stacey Abrams from taking over governor in the coming years. It's become a new thing because now they really view her as a threat because apparently she's nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Shouts out to Stacey. Yeah, that's the thing. Like they're like, we're banning Stacey from taking the election in 2024?
Yeah.
In 2024, I'm
She's
like,
been mad
wow.
quiet though. She's done some work, but she's been real quiet.
Oh, we saw what she was doing.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear. I know there were a lot of people that were involved in that, but let's be very clear. I think the reason that Stacey stands out for this is because you took your loss and you said this will never happen to not only me but anybody else in the state of Georgia. And you took it. You made not only did you make lemonade out of lemons, you made like a lemonade 5 stands out of those lemons.
Yeah,
like that's why everybody's like Stacey. It's not disregarding anybody else that put the work in.
Mm-hmm.
It's just she took a major loss and she knew she won. We all knew she won. She took it. She made 15 lemonade stands out of it. Not only made sure that she could run again and probably win, but made sure that the state of Georgia would never have to deal with that foolishness again, which opened the door for Warnock and Ossoff to get in. So let's be very clear about that. Like, we're not going to say that because I keep hearing that. Well, it wasn't just Stacey. We're not saying that. What we're saying is Stacey took a major L and turned that L into living and thriving. That's what we're saying. We're not knocking the rest of you guys.
It was just Stacey. I don't care what y'all say.
I'm not on this show. Y'all know that everything is not a reflection of the leadership plan. That is his opinion.
Everybody else was cool, but where y'all was at though?
I mean, they were.
Why we don't know y'all name?
They were.
Why y'all wasn't standing? Why she ain't shout y'all out?
Also, media is important too, and like she was behind or a big part of the documentary Suppressed, and I know that was shown if you're plugged into anything, whether it's like a community group or a church.
Yeah, they
or
was
school,
posting it everywhere, showing it to everybody.
Yeah,
and you should watch this documentary.
I didn't. What is it called?
Suppressed.
Where is it at? I never heard of it.
Google it. You can Google it. You can go catch it right now. It was pretty damning, and it just actively showed all the different areas in which most black people live, and the decrease in polling locations and voting locations in those areas, and the maintenance of polling locations everywhere else. So, people who were without transportation, who used to walk, could no longer walk. It moved their closest voting place like 30 miles away when it was 3 blocks away. So it really affected older people, really affected poor people. If you do not have a car.
Oh, so they looked at gerrymandering, because that's kind of what was at the core. That stuff, redistricting places and all that good stuff. That's kind of at the core of it, right? Gerrymandering. It's probably a good 80% of it.
Yeah, when you tell churches in those neighborhoods where you're no longer a voting station.
Right, when people have been living there for decades and decades, and that's where they always go to vote, and it was a mess. But
when you can't go to the elementary school, now you got to drive 5-10 more minutes just to get to the high school, but you don't got no car.
Right, hoping people will say, oh, well.
What that walk look like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will say that now that the election's over with and I drive around certain parts, because y'all know I went from Cobb to Stone Mountain, it's been night and day. But I will say that when I drove through certain areas that I'm not prone to drive through, I still see the billboards that we're talking about. But I was like, we really did do it this time. Like, there were voting stuff still all over the place. And I was like, wow, when we get together, it's amazing what we can actually pull off.
For sure. I am grateful, though, that the text stopped immediately following. That's
Right.
wonderful.
Yes.
I was really
Please stop texting.
Yeah, because Shaquita texted me one more time to my, hey, fam, who you voting for? Bruh, like, that was a whole nother level of just, like, disrespect. But I was like, wait a minute, now, this is a bit much. But I guess you do it for the demographic, and some other people, oh, my God, Quita just texted me. Girl, I'm texting for, okay,
It's
whatever got the
it's
job
gonna happen
done.
again, because you see this mayor race. You see both of them, Keisha and what's the other one's name?
I don't know, but I need to find out because I'm on her side.
Yeah, remember,
I make no qualms
everybody's
about
already
Keisha has
preparing
done
for
jack
2022.
nothing.
Well, hold on.
Yeah,
Before we get
you're
there.
doing a lot.
So George,
She hasn't.
Well, we need to move to the next piece. We have a lot to cover, so let's talk about vaccinations a little bit. So when Georgia surpassed 1 million vaccinations, demand still outpaces supply. Patch wrote a really good article about this a little bit earlier. We talked last week for a second about the distribution of these vaccines and, like, how are they doing this? We learned that at a Publix they sold out in an hour of, like, all their vaccines, and I was like, Publix? Like, Publix doesn't have a location everywhere. Publix has just a few locations here and there. They're not in every single city, and they're certainly not in all the big cities, even in Georgia. So I was really interested to see how they're going to distribute this.
You do know the demographic for people that shop at Publix. Need I say more?
So, right, and then Publix hit the head. Anyway, so I'm not going to, before we get into Publix and their connection
Man,
to
it's
the
a
Trump
Publix
rally.
on Glenwood. It's a Publix on Glenwood.
Actually, the funny thing is, I've started seeing what is it? Is it Lidl? It's like LIDL. It's some kind of a grocery store has popped up. Aldi. But you really don't see a lot of Publix.
Is there a Publix on, like, Memorial Drive or Covington Highway or, like?
I think I Googled
Kroger.
Publix from where I live, and I think it was a 17-mile radius to get to one. But there's a Kroger up the street, and there's another Kroger on the opposite street, and there's actually a Food Depot across the street.
Well, if you look for the article, it'll be hard to find because Publix made the headlines for their heiresses.
the $300,000 she put toward the riots.
So it's going to be hard to find it. So, but
We need to cancel her.
500,000 seniors were projected to have received their first dose as of this past Wednesday. There's still 2 million Georgians who are eligible for the vaccine who have not received the vaccine. So the distribution plan, which was supposed to be like 65 and older healthcare workers, public safety officers, et cetera, long-term care facility folks, have still not got it all. And that is supposed to be the first priority. So the question is now, a lot of criticism has come from Atlanta superintendents because they believe that the education staff needs to get them immediately. They think that they should be a part of that first group, which, I mean, there was like 3 teacher deaths in 1 week in my county. So I get it. I think that makes a lot of sense. I also think that there's something to be said about the disparity, right? We talked about, like, the disparity in the infection rates and the disparity of the hospitalizations and the deaths and the colored communities and low-income communities. So Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms has made a public effort to reach out to President Biden, to say, like, hey, can you start going through cities and counties? Can you give it to us instead of going through the state and letting the state decide? Because she doesn't trust the way that the state
I don't trust her.
is handling it. Well, here's the thing.
It's an argument, bro.
She's not alone. A lot of cities have said, like, hey, give us the vaccines. We're the cities. We should be distributing. We know where our hotspots are, and, not let it go through their state. But so there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also the issue of whether or not communities of color are apt to take the vaccine.
No, because I keep hearing that Tuskegee Airmen argument about syphilis and stuff. That's like in the forefront. Or most of the black folks I've talked to at the forefront.
Man, most of the black people I talk to and where I be at and people I be around is like, y'all ain't see what happened to that white lady on TV?
Why
would I take that vaccine?
So explain that, because
So the basically she was a healthcare worker, and it's multiple videos on YouTube of people taking this vaccine, and you starting to see over time, like they was watching these people like, you know, a week, 2 weeks on camera, and you start to see the side effects. So like she had like it looked like a seizure, but she like just passed out. And I'm like, so you don't think that these people on Bankhead is looking at this like, but I ain't taking no vaccine, but I don't even get no flu shot for real. But that's what they're saying. They're like, why would I do that when they don't even know if it worked? And you just gonna try to give it to us like, yeah, we know it worked because it worked for us. And that's not true. 8 million people in this state, and you think that you could just go and hand these around like that. It don't work like that.
I think that the divide of people who will versus won't is very interesting, because they've said that there's a third of Georgians who will not be taking the vaccine regardless.
And we think it's just black people turning it down.
And it's not.
It's
the split
I live in Monticello, and them folks is like, nope.
Right. The people who are most willing are 65 and older of all races. They're the most willing to get vaccinated. And people who are consider themselves very, very, very liberal, but it's mostly the older population. Younger population, especially 29 years and younger, no interest in taking the vaccine.
Yeah, but we know where that came from. But that came from because when it came out the gate, everybody was like, oh, you know, if you're in this age group, you're good. And they were pretty much in that age group. So now they feel invincible. And the older people are scared as hell. So they're going to want to be the first ones to take it. My aunt did it. She did both vaccines. And she updates us every day as to how she feels.
My mother has
and
too.
she did fine with the first one. The second one has been a little turbulent, but not bad. But the second one has been a little turbulent.
So explain, because I think that the problem is that we, as much promotion or research as they did before they authorized any of these, since they've been rolled out, I feel like all there has been are these anecdotal stories here and there and here and there of this person's or that person, and that does not help anybody feel confident.
Right.
Like, that doesn't help anybody feel better about it at all.
And it's a lot of other things that come with that. Like my mom coming off chemo, how would this vaccine affect her? How do you, kids that are autistic that take medicine, or kids that are on this, how does that affect them? Because you say you want to give it to all the teachers, but it ain't like all these students is going back to school. So what are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about kids that have terminal illnesses or parents that have terminal illnesses? How would that affect the medication that they're already on? Because if you watch commercials, they say, well, if you take this, you could die.
I thought about that the other day. And it's like, well, the side effects are you probably throw your insides up. You probably won't remember the days of the week.
Right, your insides on your outside.
So why would I want to take this? But I will say this, because I've seen it from both sides. The issue for me is if you get COVID, it's not just about what happens while you're in that COVID situation. It's the after effects.
Right.
I've had 3 people who, my sister had it, one of my church friends had it, my aunt had it, she died, my grandma had it.
COVID right now.
Yeah, COVID.
Okay.
Like, my grandma is fine. Unbeknownst, she's fine. My sister says there's still times, she had it about 2 months ago, there's still times that she gets winded, that she's never had that experience. My church friend who got it, they put him on blood thinners, because apparently clotting is something that can happen when you have COVID. So it's not even that. Now you're telling me to take a vaccine that, like you said, nobody really understands how it affects everybody, because it's just like COVID.
Right.
That's why when I think about herd immunity, which means that we just kind of let everybody just kind of get it, and they'll be immune after they get it. Now you're worried about that because, I gave 4 examples. Everybody had a different outcome. So you can't even depend on herd immunity, because you may get it and be fine. She may get it and she may not live. I may get it and have 50,000 after effects. So it's like you almost in a lose-lose from every aspect when you really think about it. So you really have to think about, what group am I in? If I'm an elder, it probably does behoove me to try it, because the reality is if I get it, my likelihood of living is not very high. So me getting it, 50-50. If I'm in the age group of 29 to 35, it's like, okay, well, most people say, well, I've been doing good this far, so I'll just continue to wear my mask and wash my hands. You know, people that are younger, 18 to 25, are just like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I'm good. And then you have the kids. My ultimate concern is black kids in school. The longer these kids stay out of school, my fear is we're going to lose a generation of kids. Because remember, when we talked to Frank, and he was saying kids hadn't logged in since last year, all these things. I substituted the other day in a school, elementary school, and the precautions that they took, I was blown away. The little kids had on masks. We had to make sure they washed their hands. When they went outside, they had to, when they moved, they had to do arm's length so they social distance. This can be done. At this point, I'm more concerned about the kids, the generation we may lose if they don't get back in school. We got to find a way to do it. And
Right.
that's what
also,
it is.
you're also talking elementary school. So you're talking like 500, 700 children. What do you say to a high school that got 2,500 kids?
Well, they're adults. He's got to make sure actually should be easier. If kids can do it, adults can do it.
It should be, but when you go into a classroom and every classroom got 30 kids in it, how do you separate 30 kids
I think the
in
bigger
a classroom?
I mean, they did it when we
do
were
it
younger, when they did like little lice checks or little like
And
fluoride
they do days.
rinses
So
or
it's
whatever
like
they
this
did.
day you go to class. It's
And
only
that's
like
what
10
I'm
of y'all.
starting to see. But it's like,
So what is the alternative? We let
But
them
that
continue
is,
to
but
stay out
that
of
no,
school?
but that is critical because, and they were talking about this on Political Rewind earlier. There's the consequences for a certain age of children are much higher. Like that, elementary school is such a critical learning
they
time
have to be in class.
that it's the consequences are way worse for them down the line than for a kid who's already in the
high
10th
school.
grade or 11th grade, unfortunately. So that's why it's more important that if nothing else, those schools stay open. Which is also why teachers are saying, "Hey, can I get my vaccine if I'm a teacher and I have to?" And this is this important.
Well,
so.
teachers have another whole gripe because it's like now we're asking teachers. I watched the teacher do the class. So not only did she have to teach the kids, she had her computer in the front and she
the
had
virtual.
4 kids on virtual.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, no. Okay, kids. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break, log out and log back in. And she was an older teacher, so I watched her do this. I'm like, at the end of the day, we gotta figure this out. Black kids cannot stay out of school much longer. These kids are miserably
I don't think
failing.
any kids. I want them all in school. I don't have them, and I want them all in
Well,
school.
I don't care. I love the
There's
rest
also
of
people
them.
who need to
but-
go back to work and
look,
they can't. You know what I
you
mean?
remember
Like,
when we
teachers,
was,
you know, they kinda
you
have
remember
a
when
field
we
day.
was at AIU and
Oh,
they tried
God.
to do, they would do those lecture classes online,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd be like 4 people in the lecture. You're teaching children to
Right.
understand lectures in the 2nd grade. They looking at the computer like, I don't want to do this.
yeah, it's horrible.
And children are very social, so the fact that they're not able to play with other kids or see their friends in person, they doing drive-by birthday parties. Like it's becoming where they're learning to not be social.
Which they were already struggling with anyway because of technology.
Right.
Right.
So when you get back into a classroom, what does that look like? Because the teachers, your job is super easy. You can teach on virtual. You can teach.
Okay,
from
I don't
the
know about
house.
super easy.
I'm just saying, compared to your job is easier to teach a child than it is for a child to learn from home. So you can teach
Oh,
a
yeah, I see
child.
that.
These kids are sitting. I watch my
yeah.
homegirl kids like look at the computer. My boy really playing Fortnite.
Of course.
He ain't even paying attention to you. He cussing
Yeah.
kids out. He muting the computer like, my boy, you 11.
It's really important.
we gotta figure this
They
out.
do. And you know what, folks? Just individually speaking, if you really do want that vaccine, some people really do want that vaccine. They're not stopping people from crossing state lines. If you go to Tennessee, if you go to Bama, if you go to South Carolina, where they've got a bigger supply,
Don't go to South Carolina.
Nobody's asking you where you're from. You can just, and a lot of people are. That was at New York Times this morning. Georgians traveling across state lines to get their vaccine.
I just want us to get to a place where we think about when things are said and moves are made, what they really look like. The fact that Publix got this, immediately I was like, oh, the elite. Because most people that shop at Publix, first of all, you got a lot of money to spend because Publix is not cheap. But there's a certain era of people that go to Publix. So I'm like, okay, why you started there?
It's the
why
shopping
didn't you start it as a Kroger?
experience. The
Whatever.
shopping
But
experience.
Publix
Why
is
you started at
also
Kroger?
Publix is one of those stores where it's very, very hard to find. Just like Whole Foods. Like you look for it,
Whole
you
Foods
think
will be
that's
in the
it.
cut. Yeah, that's true. You could
But
pa- yeah,
Publix,
yeah.
like just think about how many Publixes do you actually know in the city of Atlanta? I know 3.
City of.
Or even if you go to South
Like
Carolina, I
downtown
don't know where
Atlanta,
Yeah.
I know 3.
Yeah.
But where I live in Monticello, Ingles. Go up the street, Ingles.
Yeah.
Down the street, Ingles.
There are all these variations of
Walmart,
grocery stores.
and
I've heard of
Food
Walmart.
Depot.
Yeah, what is Food Depot exactly?
It's a grocery. It's
Because I
similar
go,
to
it's
Piggly
across the
Wiggly.
street, but I'm just like,
It's similar
Never
to
heard of
it's similar to Piggly
yeah,
Wiggly.
it's
like
my first time too.
it's very similar to
Oh, I've
Piggly
been to a
Wiggly.
Piggly
Like,
Wiggly.
and I like Food Depot because they be having the snacks.
It's interesting, but it's not like
It's
like
not,
the one that's across from me. It's not like we've come to know grocery stores to have a bakery, a deli, all that stuff. I don't see any
Nah,
of
they
that at
don't got
Food
none of
Depot.
that.
It's
They
like you
like-
go in and you get what you need, get out.
hey, we got food with you can see them dates. They put their dates on their food real big. So now this you got 2 weeks. You got 2 weeks on this cheese.
Let's transition a little bit, folks. Well, do you want to move into? Did you want to talk about jobs, or do you want to talk about your this entertainment piece? I think we should move to either more about Nick Cannon and get into that.
Shout out my man's his Nick. That's my man's.
All right, so let's get in. Okay, so I have this article that talks about most of the people know that 2 years ago, Nick Cannon made some comments
Last
on a
year.
podcast. Was it last year?
That was last year.
No, because you were here when we discussed that. You weren't here last year. That'd be like 2 years
when he
ago.
got canceled.
Yeah, that was
That was the end of 2019.
like 2
Okay.
years ago. It's
A year-
2021.
I forget.
A year, some change.
Let's go.
We
In any event, he made some comments on the podcast. I think about Jewish people. And
He didn't.
For that,
He didn't make the comments.
Who made the comments?
The guy that was kicked out of Public Enemy made those comments, and Nick Cannon agreed, and they were having a discussion about Jews' role in entertainment
On Cannon's class.
and on Cannon's class, which is one of those things where YouTube is one of those places like Facebook. If the world feels you're wrong, YouTube will take your channel down, and they didn't. So it's like MTV. You only got 3 shows, and 2 of them belong to Nick Cannon, but all right.
So if I remember right, these were along the lines of black people being true Hebrews.
Yeah, I think it was something to that
Okay.
extent. In any event, it caused an uproar in that particular community, and we all know they hold the purse strings for a lot of things. So somehow things got in an uproar, and they decided to cancel Nick. Like we say cancel. When we say cancel, we mean pull his stuff, pull his show, kind of not so much erase, but kind of like, yeah, you're done.
No, they canceled him. They replaced him with
They put
Terry
somebody else on the show?
Crews on what is that? What was the other show he was doing? He was doing
the
America's
Masked-
Got Talent. No, he's still on the Masked Singer.
Oh yeah.
They replaced him on a bunch of shows because he was doing a bunch of NBC shows at the same time. Masked Singer, America's Got Talent. What's the other one?
God, he had more than that.
Yeah, he was doing a bunch of stuff. They replaced him with that. They took down, took his position at MTV, took his TV show at MTV.
He was considered fired for sure.
And then he did like 13 rabbi interviews, and it changed the whole discussion.
Well, okay, so that brings us to now. So apparently he's earned praise in recent months from Jewish leaders for partnering with Jewish community organizations against anti-Semitism. In August, Cannon and Anti-Defamation League CEO Jonathan Greenblatt co-authored an op-ed in the Jewish newspaper The Ford on the anniversary of 2017, the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, VA, and the need for black and Jewish leaders to work together. A month earlier, Cannon toured the Simon Winsall Center's Museum of Tolerance and pledged a donation to the organization. The statement from the Wines Hall Center said, he appears to be someone who's genuine in his desire to make sure people understand his apology. My question is, cancel culture has become a thing. Can cancel culture become the police dog for celebrities?
Yeah.
Because once they become canceled, most of them do what he did. Like the comments he made, I guess he didn't realize the effect they could have on that particular community. So he actually went into the community and actually did the work to the capacity that the leadership in that community said, you know what, we genuinely feel like Nick Cannon has made a penance for his actions, and we feel like he's good. So it's kind of like giving him a check mark from the community he offended. So now he's back in talks to get back on Wildin' Out. Yes, Nick Cannon does a lot of things outside the Masked Singer and Wildin' Out. Yeah, but Wildin' Out was a staple. People watch it, including me. Everybody know how picky I am about what I watch, and I actually love Wildin' Out. So again, that's my question: can cancel culture be a police dog for celebrities?
Probably, but in his particular case, it didn't work. See, for him it didn't work mostly because it wasn't that he was wrong. It's that a lot of the information that he's discussing is misinformed on both sides. So you have your argument with your research. They have their argument with their research. Your research is as old as their research. So when you meet and you say, okay, now I understand where you're coming from, but we see it as this, which is what you saw in the first interview with, he's the head rabbi in New York State. When somebody sits down with you and say, well, from our viewpoint, you can't have a conversation about the Holocaust and not say that 6 million people died and how it affected everybody else. Well, that's not what I said. What I said is that because of the Holocaust, your story continues to be told. Why they don't tell our story. And the rabbi was like, well, I understand. And then you have another rabbi interview. And then you interview the guy that's over those rabbis. And then you interview junior rabbis and this guy and that. From that community, you do the work for understanding. Nobody does that in our community. Like, nobody comes to the black community and say, well, let's do research for understanding. They say, well, we see what we see and y'all show us what we see, so that's it. Nobody does that, and you don't see anybody that get canceled go do the research. It's very few people in his particular position where he's the owner of his show. He runs the show. He's program director here and here and here, introduces all these ideas, sell all these TV ideas, and then you say, well, we're just going to pull you from everything. Well, you don't realize that you need him because the face of your show before you see anything else is Nick Cannon. And the number one show played on cable TV for MTV is his show. 12 years. Mm-hmm. Name another show that's ran that long on MTV other than Ridiculousness.
So are you saying that the cancel culture works on other cultures, just not us? Like when people say derogatory things about our community, they don't do the work.
That's not
I'm
true
saying for celebrities and like him, it didn't work. Like you can't cancel somebody like him because he is not like he's saying something wrong. He's saying something from the information that he's had, and he's asking for understanding. Yeah, and he's willing to say that. But for other people, that's just
he was willing to say that. It doesn't mean he isn't wrong, but I do think that. So first of all, Nick Cannon wasn't accused of sexual harassment or anything. So it's not as there's different levels of crimes that can, I guess, lead to cancellation. This was a belief that he spoke that is a very common belief and a very prevalent belief among a lot of people, a lot of Black people especially. So I do think that what he's done out of this is really important. I think it's Mayim Bialik is her name. So Blossom.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Tiffany Haddish and Nick Cannon and a whole bunch of other folks have signed like the statement, and they're actually going to start a Black and Jewish entertainment company and like work to bridge mutual understanding amongst Black people and Jewish people. I think this is really important because what his statement said to me and what the controversy said to me was there's always been this, not always been, but Black people often, and because slavery has been America's original sin.
Right.
And it is, for a lot of people, especially modern. Well, when we talk about huge acts of atrocity, like horrible acts of crime committed against a group of people, most people think about the Holocaust. In the American subconscious, we think about slavery. So there is a sort of question that starts this sort of misery Olympics amongst people who don't understand the bigger picture.
Worse.
Right. Who had it the worst? And it becomes a stupid conversation that we're having in which we're trying to figure out whose life sucks more. And but I think so. I think it's an important bridge that we have to cross and to come together around. And in the city of Atlanta, anyway, and the justice reform space, we work with a lot of Jewish communities, and they're very active, and they believe in social activism, and it's part of their ethos. We should probably have a bigger conversation about that with someone who is Jewish, but the Jewish Community Relations Council is really big and really active in issues that do not necessarily affect a lot of people at all who are Jewish, but definitely affect Black people.
They put in work.
Mm-hmm, the temple, a lot of these communities. So they're not, there are plenty of wealthy Jewish people, but there are also probably one of the most philanthropic, if not the most philanthropic community that exists, period, as well. And so I think that this is going to be more important, hopefully as a whole, across cultures, rather than just coming out of that one statement. So I think that what this situation looks like to me, more so than being about cancel culture, is this is the first potential revival from cancellation that I've seen from anyone. Yeah, even people who've been later exonerated from their crimes, like Aziz Ansari, who everybody has now decided was wrongly canceled because he didn't really do anything, and he was very quickly just,
And they were happy that he didn't sue her.
They were very right, and they said, well, he had the right to sue her, but since then, we have not seen Aziz Ansari do as much publicly as he was before that. I do think that
he spoke about it.
Right.
He was like, why? For what? Just so you could say, well, you remember that thing you were accused of? Well, I was accused wrongly. Mm-hmm. And if I would have sued her, it would have went different. Mm-hmm. We've seen it a few times where people was like, no, I can just sue you and take everything that you have.
Yeah, and they usually do because it's an ugly thing to go through, especially that. It's an ugly thing to be accused of.
Yeah, that was bad.
But he's the first person, especially once these shows start coming back on television, who I think will have made potentially a full revival.
Which is why I chose him. I was like, once people get canceled, it's typically, I don't want to say it's a wrap, but they go underground. And it's just like you said,
never went away. That's the thing. He never went away.
That's true.
His platform, and that's something that you can argue. You get fired from MTV to have, I think, 5 channels. Mm-hmm. All 5 of their channels, except for their music channel, plays his show. So you lose the only TV show. So you got Ridiculousness for 6 hours, his show for 6 hours, and something in between. They brought back Jersey Shore.
I was wondering, but I was like, why am I seeing commercials?
Because you had to. You had to. Because what do you do when you lose 12 hours of programming? Nick Cannon has 12 hours of programming, and every day it's a different episode. So
Is that
what?
many episodes of Wild 'N Out?
Yes, they shoot so often that it didn't make sense.
So maybe you're right. Maybe it is. Do you think it's about forgiveness from the affected community, from the community affected by? Because, I think Kevin Hart made a couple of apologies after saying he would not make another apology after his comments.
That was his problem. Don't say you're not going to apologize and then apologize again.
Right.
And then again.
Well, okay,
Well,
true.
here's an example too. I mean, that happens, and Kevin said a lot of things. Not
So
yeah,
would
but
it
he
would
said
it
a lot of
take?
things.
Do you think that forgiveness from multiple people within the LGBTQ community would have made a difference?
I think what happens is when you are hit by the cancel culture, you have to make amends to the people, the leadership in that community. Like with Nick's thing, the leadership in the Jewish community said, you know what, we pretty much feel like, or the highest leadership in their community said, we feel like he's pretty much done his penance. We think he's good. We think he apologizes. I think with Kevin Hart, he had to get, the biggest LGBTQ, isn't there something else?
IA.
Plus.
He had to get, the highest.
It's a plus.
Leadership. Yeah, I think it's a plus because I think they just ran out of letters. I think they really kind of ran out of letters.
The alphabet.
Yeah, I mean, they just started adding. So anyway, he had to get forgiveness from the highest leadership in LGBTQ plus community.
But is it leadership?
I feel like it's.
I think
I think it's leadership.
I think it
in
was
that
certainly leadership.
particular community?
Yeah.
think so.
There's a leadership
I think
circle.
I mean, there's a
Honestly-
group of people that are very famous, but leadership,
No,
I wouldn't.
So
they're
these-
influential too. They're not just famous.
well-
they're influential.
Well, I was gonna say, I think his was the opposite. I think he was actually not he was not hanging out with Jewish celebrities. He was not like going to Seth Rogen for forgiveness. He was going to rabbis and leaders within
He
the
was going
Jewish
in and
authority,
putting in the work.
Yeah,
But
he
I
wasn't just
also
talking
think
like,
that it's different when, like Kevin Hart can't make these comments because his career is predicated on them saying that, and it's an argument that Nick Cannon made where, and the rabbi made it too, well, you see us in those positions not understanding how we got there. Well, we don't got to ask all those questions because you're there now. You are the producers and the executive producers and casting directors and right. That's your position. Can Kevin Hart make those same? So that would be the real question. Can somebody other than Nick Cannon come back from this? And I don't know.
I think they can. I think it's about what Nick Cannon said. Nick Cannon did not promote hate speech. I think it could be qualified as misinformation from some people. I don't think it was considered a hate speech like some of the jokes that they pulled up around Kevin Hart. Now, he did go to Ellen DeGeneres' show, and she did defend him. And
Which will make a big difference.
Well, you would think. I don't know if it did for him. I think a lot of people were just very, very, very
Who, Kevin Hart?
upset. Yeah, I mean, we
But see,
saw
with Kevin
all
is
these.
because a lot of people, there are a group of people that believe that Kevin Hart is very, very funny. I like Kevin Hart, but I don't think he's very, very
I don't
funny.
think it's very, very funny either.
And that group
So
of
is that
people,
is that the real problem?
that group of people, I think that there are more people that believe that Kevin Hart isn't funny on stage as a comedian compared to him being in movies and him doing a lot. I wouldn't argue about his movies, but when you are trying to be funny and when you say it online, especially on Twitter, it can be very misconstrued. So when I see your tweet, I don't care how you meant it, you said it. So how do you apologize to that many people? Like, if you keep, and that's the difference. Nick Cannon didn't apologize. He said, if I'm misinformed, give me the information so I can make a better judgment when I use my words.
Which I think, okay, so in that thought process, I think that's the difference, because with Kevin Hart, it was statements that were made that were, I don't want to say malicious, but just inconsiderate of that particular community. With Nick Cannon, it was misinformation from, like you were saying, from kind of both sides, that we think this, you think this.
But it's a joke insensitive. And that's where a lot of these comedians that stand by Kevin Hart.
Yeah, and Nick wasn't trying to be funny.
Yeah, he wasn't being funny.
I don't think when Kevin made his comments, he was trying to be funny. I
was.
think
He
that's what
he called them
feeling.
jokes.
But
He
he
called them
wasn't.
jokes.
He also wasn't the only one that made.
And he thought they were
a
harmless
lot
jokes.
of comedians have made that same sentiment, especially
lot.
around those jokes.
A lot.
So it's like, okay, do you would you make those same arguments against, when what's the guy that used to be on Saturday Night Live when he makes jokes on stage, or would you argue that same thing with Jerry Seinfeld if he makes that same joke?
So are
Because
we
it's
talking about
funny.
black males?
No, when it's funny, it's taken one way. When it's not funny, it's
Yeah, but who
not
defines
funny.
funny though?
I think it's a
The
I think it's
people.
the people. I think it's a combination of all of those things that you guys are talking about. I also think it has to do with the fact that his immediate response to it was
Apology.
I'm not apologizing again. I won't. I've done
Right.
it before. That's old. Leave my old tweets alone. Leave me alone. I think that had a lot to do with it, which he did cover in his 6-part documentary series. Don't F This Up. I think.
Right. And
Which
that was
I
a great
love that series.
documentary.
It was
I love that.
great.
I'm trying to remember that comedian,
Great.
the guy that
But-
was
But
pulling
you saw his
meat
team
out.
in that documentary series saying like, "Oh my God, get him off of social media because he's
he
going to
kept
regret
apologizing.
being defensive." Yeah, well,
And he kept coming for people like, stop trying to get me to apologize. I already did that already.
and people
That
need to
looks
forgive.
insensitive
People do
on
need
Twitter.
to forgive, but usually the person who needs forgiveness cannot tell other people
That they need to
people
forgive.
right. I think that causes a big problem. So
Well, I mean, I guess if we say in police, and I guess it boils down to what would be the purpose of getting canceled? What would be the resolve from getting canceled? Is it that you go do work with the leadership in the community that you offended, or I guess that's the question. Like, if we're going to use it to police, what is going to be the objective? If we cancel you tomorrow,
Right.
what is the objective for us to uncancel you?
And that's the problem, is that cancellation is not a coordinated effort. It's this emotional reaction, and it happens so quick. I object today, and I make a public apology about the conversation we had about the Cuties documentary on Netflix.
And you.
Okay?
You brought that one
As a
up.
part of this whole conversation, I am not going to remind anyone of the fact that you are very much on my side, because I'm
That's
going to
probably
take
true.
personal responsibility
That's probably true.
and say that I was very quick to judge that documentary, and it was not what I thought it was. And the tweet, and that's why it's so important to. And I always do this, I feel like,
What?
but that doesn't matter because I didn't do it this time.
Well, it wasn't
So
just you
I
now. Half
felt
the world.
an immediate reaction watching the ending scene of like a 90-minute documentary, and it was so much more than that, and I sincerely regret it.
Oh, you
And
didn't
to
watch
that
the whole
black,
thing?
and to the black French Senegalese filmmaker who did an incredible job turning that, adapting that, and I think it's worth a watch. It's not what Twitter led you to believe with that very ending clip, and I apologize.
I didn't know you didn't watch the thing.
I didn't want. No, I didn't. I watched. I skimmed it. Like I went, did that thing where I put the fast forward on 24 times.
Ma'am, that's beyond a skill.
I
That's
shouldn't have.
Like a snapshot.
I am apologizing. That was wrong.
I knew nothing about this.
Anyway.
I'm so sorry. I knew nothing
That's-
about this.
You were.
But that's one of how far does apologies get you? When
I don't
it's,
know.
When it's not funny.
I'm being
Because if you would have
honest.
said it and it was funny and other people laughed, it would have been funny.
But I don't think
Well-
it needs to be funny. I was
the
was
thing she
serious.
talking about
I
with
was
that
sincere.
documentary. Was it a documentary or a show?
It was a documentary. It was a
On-
documentary film
Like I don't know. That was
on this young.
But it
on a-
wasn't just you. Everybody like
It
really,
was everybody.
Did they take it down? I think they took it. Did they take it
A
down?
lot of people, yes. For a while they did. They took
I think they took it
and they
down.
changed the promotional material for it, and they said that they would not allow anybody to see it. But I should have immediately watched the whole documentary.
I didn't
and
know
not
you didn't
allowed
watch it.
But
myself
was
to
it
get
good?
emotional.
I didn't know you didn't
I
watch
can't wait
it.
to send him this clip afterwards.
Was it
Because
good?
he was equally judgmental of that documentary.
I mean,
Because
I-
if
anyway,
it wasn't
Because
good,
you were
then-
adamant about it. I was like, oh,
All right.
this is, this is.
It was not child
Just angry about
pornography.
Okay, we can move on.
And I shouldn't have called it that. So let's move on. We have only a few minutes.
All right,
we
so
have
let's get
more
in
time than I thought.
No, we got like 15 minutes.
Okay.
But
Next one. Is it,
no, we can get in Derek. It's fine.
okay. Do we?
Because I can
wait,
ask him this while we talking about him.
But first, I still want to talk about conspiracy theories. Just
Oh,
really
we
quickly.
ain't
We
finished.
don't need to
That's
spend a long
that's
time
gonna
doing
be
it,
a
but
whole
we
show.
have
Exactly.
no. We don't. We have time. We have time. I remember.
Oh,
when
you
we
got
started.
you got 2 minutes. On
Okay,
it.
I've got a clock on it. Okay, so because the Marjorie Taylor Greene is a major headline right now, she's a Georgia congresswoman. She was ousted from all of her committee seats. Everybody, Democrats press people to get her removed from all these committee posts because of all these conspiracy theories that she has been a solid believer in for many, many, many years.
Yeah, but I
So
read
she's-
some of the stuff she said. It was some nasty stuff. Like,
Yes,
The problem is
she
that
did.
she's not the only person that feel like that. She's just
Exactly.
the first person to say it out loud.
Well, but it's not even so much her saying it out loud. It's her being adamant about it, like across all her social media.
And
I think
an
that
elected
all
official.
these people,
Exactly.
all
Some of
these
these things
people
are
feel
violent.
like that.
Some of these
That's
things are
fine,
violent.
but there still has to be a line between what you say and what you believe. Like, you can't just go around here spouting all
No, you
kinds
can
of stuff.
believe
especially
whatever
if
you
you're
want to
There's
believe,
also
but
a
don't tell me
difference-
what you believe because I don't really care until I feel like it affects me.
But that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
that's
When
the-
does
That's
it?
what we're saying.
If somebody's in a position of power, especially at the national level, is that acceptable? Is it acceptable
She's
to
a
have such
congresswoman.
beliefs? Right, a U.S. congresswoman, not just a Georgia
Congressmen and
congresswoman.
congresswomen believe Trump when he said we should drink bleach to cure COVID. I support him.
Should someone who
Drink
believes that
bleach.
be in
Did we oust
they not
them and
dangerous?
tell them that they know? Did we call Mitch McConnell? Hey, my boy, you got to get up out of there because you support that. Nobody did that.
No, we're
They
not talking
wanted
about
to,
support.
people
We're talking about
wanted
being,
But they
like,
didn't do it.
blatant
They didn't have the power
about
to.
stuff.
Now they have the power to, which is why she was ousted from her committee seats. They had the
mean,
power to
that's
oust
cool.
her.
But
All right,
we
so
still
let me-
finna pay her $200.
Let me put some perspective on this then. Okay, so for one of the things she did in one post from January 2019, Green liked a comment that said a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. In other posts, Green liked comments about executing FBI agents who in her eyes were part of the deep state working against Trump. You cannot like and say stuff like this. No, not as a congresswoman. Now, if that's the way you feel, fine. Go behind closed door, put on your little white cone hat, and hey, whatever
I
it
think
is.
upon Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, she tried to say that she wasn't dead. That she took a picture of some woman in the airport and said that she had a body double. She tried to say that
People
Hillary
said
Clinton
certain
had
things
a
about
body
Tupac.
double.
I'm not.
We are not.
But I'm
We're
just saying.
not talking about
Is
Tupac.
that
I'm
a
just
sign of
saying,
mental health?
No, that is a sign of and y'all. This is me. I believe, especially with white women, when they get talking crazy, like we do not treat them the same way as we would treat. Look at Trump. Look at what our former president was saying on a daily basis on Twitter.
And his mental health was questioned on a daily basis
all
on
the
Twitter.
time, but he stayed president for 4 years.
That's because you can't just oust
Yeah,
a
you
sitting
can't just
president.
get
It's
rid
not.
of a
It's not that
president.
simple.
Yeah,
We've
but-
seen that we've tried, and we're still trying, and he's not even president anymore.
Literally.
So
Man,
it's
my
not
boy-
that simple.
My boy fit go to one of his little places and chill. Either you're gonna take her seat, like you can't out somebody and say, "Well, you lose all of this and this," but you're still gonna pay her $200, and she's still y'all gonna pay for where she lives and what she drives and her
Well,
security
now,
detail.
the House is
take
still-
all of those
That's
things
what the
and
Democrats.
fire her.
That's what the Democrats are trying to do next. They're like, this is not enough. We want her out. So
Right.
that's what they're working on now.
But-
But to strip her in the intermediate, I think it sends a message. It sends a message that we're not going to tolerate this kind of foolishness. I know y'all had fun when Trump was in office, but he's not in office anymore. We're not going to tolerate this foolishness. So we're going to strip you now, but that's just the beginning. We're going to get rid of
I
your
just want
behind
to
in
talk.
the end.
Yes, we need to talk about personal responsibility for this. What she said was, and I guess what's supposed to, I don't know if it's supposed to be apology or not. She said, I was allowed to believe things that weren't true, and I would ask questions about them and talk about them, and that's what I absolutely regret. What does that mean?
That sounds like you dumb and you should go home.
All I'm saying is that I think this is a dangerous thing. I don't understand what. No, that's not true. I hate that people are questioning whether or not the sky is blue in 2021. I just feel like there's some questions that are just so futile and ridiculous to even be asking, and to hear that 1 + 1 is 2, but if it came from CNN or Fox, is going to determine whether
Exactly,
or
might
not
be
you take it
5 or 6.
It's just.
I mean, if that's the side
no.
that she sit on,
That you even question where it came from.
That's the
you shouldn't
side
have
that
to
she sit
question
on.
who said that before you just accept it.
Well, I think that's the thing that disturbs me about. I don't think we understood just the amount of seeds that Trump has planted in those 4 years.
But it's
We're
not
looking
just
at it on the
him.
surface. I know. I'm just saying.
he
but-
was doing it when Obama was in office. Like, have we really seen his birth certificate? Is it really him? I don't know. That looks.
Yeah, but the
it looks
stuff
like
that he-
somebody wrote that. Like, shut up, bro.
Yeah, but the stuff he planted in the 4 years he said in office, we're probably gonna be dealing with for a hot minute. Like,
Right, but
he planted so
what
many
can you-
seeds.
What can you do about it? 'Cause
Start
people-
uprooting the one stuff like this. We start here.
Man, we can't. At the end of the day, like it got to be in you already. This
What?
stuff is in these people already.
Well, that's fine. You just can't have you can't hold an office
We
like
could
that.
we could say that, but it could be people that are your allies that have hate in their heart, and you can't change that. It ain't my job.
You can't change hate, but stupidity there's got to be a policing on stupidity.
there needs
I
to
don't
be
believe
some
you can
form of
police
correction.
racism in every area. I don't believe you can weed it out of people individually in every individual. I
You'll
don't
never be able
believe
to do
that's
that.
possible. I do believe that if people believe the earth is flat, insist the earth is flat, or insist that QAnon is real to the extent that these people believe it is, I do think there's got to be something that we can do.
Well, like most
that
people
prohibits
say,
someone
you can't,
from-
most people will say, "Well, you can't tell me it's wrong unless you have evidence that I'm wrong." And if that's the argument, then I'll just stop talking.
But
Like,
there's been
just
so
tell
much
someone-
evidence, they just don't accept that evidence. They dispute that evidence.
because it's always one sided. There's a person. Jordan Peterson says, "Well, you have to assume that the person that you're talking to knows something that you don't, and you have to." I don't assume that you're right. I'll just assume that you have some information that I don't, and then I'll do research. That's not what she did. So I'm not giving her a pass to say, hey, well, I mean, it's freedom of speech. But like, come on, babe. Like you sound dumb because your freedom of speech should be practiced at home. And then you should make sure that it sound the way you thought it sounded in your head before you say it out loud and you can't take it back. because that's what happens on the internet. You say things and you can't take it back even after you delete them, and you got to deal with it. And now she's starting to see, I got to deal with it. Like you said, we're going to have to watch how this blossoms, because if I can become a congresswoman and then they just oust me and I can still make $200 a year, I could do what I want in real life and still get security detail and my car and my condo and this and that.
Yeah,
I'll never get a job in government again.
Right.
But
I'll be taken care of for the rest of my life.
2 years.
And you can use that money to continue to further the cause that you really believe in.
Right.
So that's the scary part too.
So
Yeah,
it's one of those things like it's just certain people I can't.
Well, okay, so here's the reality. There are two things that hang in the balance that will set the stage for where we move forward in dealing with what Trump put in place. That is what we do with these insurrectionists that did domestic terrorism on the Capitol, how we punish them, how we get them, and this foolishness right here, having Congress people making these kind of lascivious comments and this kind of behavior. These two things that hang in the balance will set the stage. What's the third?
Give my mans that was in there swinging that little pole, give my man an award or something. Like,
what?
He was trying to stop him. He was just by himself.
Security guard?
Yeah.
Oh, we did. At the inauguration, he's been promoted to something because he was right there.
Give my man an award, man. He was
in
just
any
in there.
event.
He ain't shoot nobody. He was how you kept closing the pole like. I'm gonna hit one of y'all.
Well, I mean, think about
I'm gonna hit one.
Shot
like,
somebody, then they would start shooting at him.
It is. Which is a good point, because her most dangerous thing for me is the Parkland conspiracy.
Yeah, I don't argue with
that. The
about
Parkland school shooting was orchestrated to make people afraid of guns or something.
And let's not forget, she's from Georgia. She's like
I know, and I'm sure UGA is very humiliated.
A lot of people that
she represents
the
Georgia's 14th congressional district.
Right.
So once again, she's from Georgia.
Yeah, she out there somewhere.
Don't keep saying that. The point is, there's got to be something that can be done about this in a bigger way.
Like
so
I said, those two things is what's going to determine how we move forward, how we punish them, and what we do with this chick. But I digress. All right.
Now,
Double R is in the building. So what's been going on, sir?
Working, man. That's it. Working on music and working.
All right, so tell us about your music history for most people that don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been a songwriter since I was 14, and I've done other stuff in between that. And then probably like the last 2 to 3 years, it just made sense for me to take it way more serious. Like, oh, bills can get paid from just doing this, and that's what I did. No, I'm just saying, like, as a independent artist, you don't really see money in real time. You kind of see it on the back end. And I got a mobile studio, so I started seeing it like, let me buy a second group of equipment and let me just, hey, can you put this in your studio and y'all just pay me to use it? Yeah, we could do that. And then I started seeing that income, and, people started paying for my hooks, and I was like, okay, I'm doing a little bit. Let me focus on me now.
All right, so 2 years ago, we had a discussion with you and, I'm not calling by his real name. Vigilante.
Yeah.
We had a discussion with you and Vigilante about independent artists and what that looked like. I'm concerned more so now because how are artists getting paid? Like, you're getting spins on Spotify, but that's like 1 cent for each spin or something like that.
Actually
have you thought about have your views changed on that at all since we had that conversation?
Getting a deal? My views on getting a deal is always like, as long as it makes sense. If it makes sense, if you know how to read a contract, people think that 360s are super bad, but it's like, no, it just has to be incentivized.
Can you explain what those are for people who
like, you get a 360 deal, and it's basically the person that signed the deal or gives you the deal gets a percentage of all the money you make. Merch, tour sales, ticket sales, record sales. Anytime you move and you go make money, they get a percentage. If it's incentivized and if it's short term, it'll make sense because you're getting somebody to give you 7 figures up front for no work in real life. And we see a lot of artists signing deals that are technically 360s. They just don't. The wording is different. So you'll say the guy, I don't even remember these dudes' names, but you sign a deal. It's a 7-figure deal, over $1 million easily. You say, okay, well, I got 4 people I know I got to pay immediately. My lawyer, I got to pay my manager, I got to pay the person that introduced me to the person that got me. I got to pay them. I got to buy my mama a house. So by the time you end up paying all these people and after taxes, you probably looking at like a couple $100,000, but your song getting radio play and you got video and you got a remix with somebody and this and that, but you can't do shows. So is your music actually big enough to outlast what this pandemic is going to look like? And for artists like me, preferably when you're independent, when you could put out bodies of work versus looking for one song to kind of do that for you, it actually makes more sense for me because when things open back up, I have bodies of work I can perform at a time versus taking a song that I got and maybe like some freestyles and like some stuff I put on. I don't have to do that. I had 2 bodies of work. I got another album coming, so 3 full bodies of work that I can go on anybody's stage and perform and make that the money that I would make to kind of further everything else versus looking for one song and then you got to play that song a bunch of times. That's why I don't go to clubs. You go to a club and you see somebody come perform in the club, that one song.
Yeah, but isn't that a double-edged sword, though, when you really think about it? Because if I have this one song, people are more incentivized to come to my concerts, even if it's just for that one song. And when they get there and I have to do the whole album, they may find another song they like, which kind of keeps me in motivation versus me having 3 bodies of work that people don't really know a lot of the singles from, so they have less of an incentive to come to a concert.
That's if you're pushing if you're looking for a hit. No, it doesn't make sense for you because they're not looking for you. They're not listening to your music as a body of work. They skimming through your projects, which is why like somebody like NBA Youngboy who can put out massive amount of music in a year, 4 or 5 projects in a year, and he make $50,000 a month from YouTube.
But I'm also thinking either way, you're probably doing a lot of collaboration or hopping on other people's stages for a while anyway. If you're in the like, if you have one song,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So can you talk about how this comes together as an independent artist? Do you work in community with a lot of other artists? Because I know there's other people that are on an EP, but like, do you have to say, okay, I'm gonna do everything. I'm going to do all this by myself, all that by myself?
No, I work with like 2 people for real.
Okay, so how does that work?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things. If you kind of know where you want to go, you know what you want to do, it's not very difficult. I knew since 2016 that the way my concepts would stretch over a period of time, I knew what they would look like. So you go, the concept is, what if I valued myself as somebody that would give me money, value me? So that's the journey of $1. That's my next album. What does that look like? Well, you got to talk about what it looked like before you get to that point, when there is no value at all. So that's, can I borrow $1? I know what money can do, but like, do people look at me like that? Like, oh, I can give him something for him being something. That's what Can I Borrow $1 is. And Stories I Tell is basically just songs that I wrote in between that based on the experiences I was going through. And it's multifaceted. So you hear like Can I Live, which is like how I really feel most of the time. And Stories I Tell, which is those things happen and I could write about them. And then it's like Way Up and Purpose, Kobe Dies. I feel like, you know, his example of finding your purpose after you thought that this thing was your purpose is kind of what we do. So I thought, you know, we go to school, we get those degrees, we like, man, I got this. That's not my purpose. My purpose has always been music to me because that's the only thing I really feel truly happy doing. Everything else is like extra. And that's where leading into this kind of going from Can I Borrow $1 to Stories I Tell, I saw like the transition in people around me kind of seeing, well, what you doing, bro? Like, are you falling back from music? No, I'm just working. And I understand that if you don't really got it like that and enough people don't know you, they don't know what work look like. Because you kind of watch people go from, I ain't never heard of you, to now everybody know you very, very fast. And in a city like this, it look weird. It's like, what you working for if don't nobody know you? Is that your purpose? Because if your purpose is for everybody to know you, I mean, it's 8 billion people. I don't think all of them know.
Well, a lot of people don't understand work in general, I think, unfortunately. But so does it matter at this point? Is it just about creating it, executing it, getting it out there, or does it really matter? Do you need to spend months and months and months? Because there's so many different streaming services and there's so many different platforms and there's so many different apps. Like, does it matter? Or do you have to spread yourself as thin as possible and be absolutely everywhere?
No, I can't do that.
Or can you just go deep on whatever?
Yeah, I can't. I can't. I could, but I don't want to. So, like, shout out to She Thorough. Shout out to Toya. She kind of like.
I love Toya.
Yeah,
Shout out to Toya. That's my. Wait,
manager.
You work with her?
Yeah, that's my.
Wait,
manager.
whoa, what?
Yeah.
Oh, I got to call her. She just texted me the other day. She ain't told me. Oh, I got to talk to her.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
for those that don't know, since he brought her up, She Thorough brought me Akeem. He was on a television show. He's a CMO. She brought him to the TV show. So I have a very good working relationship with her as well. So that's why it's funny you said that. Oh, yeah, you're in good hands. I love her.
That's my manager. So it's like I kind of know what I want, and then we just execute it.
How do you define yourself or describe yourself?
I never heard that question.
Work.
I'm curious. No, I mean,
Like
as an
whatever
artist.
work
I
look
mean,
like.
as an artist.
Like as an artist, I just do the work. You know, those categories that people see themselves in music is like, what do you know about the artist that you like the most before you knew them? And that's kind of like the position I see myself in. Like, what does it look like before you know me? And people that really know me, like y'all, like, nah, I know him for real. So the person that you see is kind of what you get.
Literally.
And that it is what it is. And a lot of people change over time. But it's like, I don't want to change. I just want to grow.
So if you were to think about, because when people ask me about Double R, and because they're always going to try to compare you to somebody, and even if it's not an actual comparison, the thought process. So who would you like? Who are the
Cole,
people you follow? I need to go say that.
Yeah, like
It's
it's
good.
a group.
That's what I tell people.
Yeah, it's like a small group of independent artists that I look at like, yeah, that's me right now. And then the bigger artists would be like J. Cole, Kendrick, Big Crit, Saha, like those people where the art meant way more than everybody knowing me at the time. Because when everybody learns who I am, I don't have to say nothing. You put the music out and the music do all the work. Like I don't gotta come out and do no interviews, and I don't gotta try to talk to everybody and try to be everybody's friend and try to fit in. I don't gotta do none of that.
Because sometimes that seems like a strategy in and of itself. With people
It's very hard to
all
do.
I do is, well, I'm sure it is, but it's also kind of like I've seen this person on 60 different things. I don't know what they do. I have no idea what they do.
And eventually you get tired of it, especially with artists. And because I rap, it's like eventually you'll get tired of like hearing certain people rap. And we're kind of in that popcorn era where eventually you get tired of hearing yourself.
Wait, what?
I've been working on Stories I Tell since. I've been working on Journey of a Dollar since 2016. I finished it in 2017. I went back in and started re-recording in 2019. I recorded Can I Borrow a Dollar in 2017, put it out in 2018. Stories I Tell, a lot of these songs were already written. Stories I Tell Part 2 is already done. Journey of a Dollar Part 2 is. So it's like all of this music is already done. The work that I had to do to get to a point where now I don't have no choice. I got to put it out.
Well, I was going to say for me, and this is why I asked you that question is in particular, is because I'm not even going, and I told my wife about this because she listens to nothing but rap and hip hop pretty much all the time and gospel. I feel like I'm not a rap fan and I've never been a rap fan. I am a lyricist fan. So there's a handful of people who do rap who I really, really like, and that's why I always liked. That's why I'm so glad we did that freestyle on the first time that I think I met you.
Yeah.
On that first, no, it wasn't my first show.
No, that
was
was
That's why I really liked it.
Yeah.
So I like All Possibles. I like Purpose, which is the sweater you're wearing right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's going to be visible, but Can I Live was my favorite. It's dark. It's kind of dark.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
No, that's what it's supposed
I think it's
to
kind
be.
of dark. Can you explain that?
So
It's my favorite.
It's
but-
that particular story was something because I never had seen it. It's the story of the guy. He went to work and he hated his job. So the day that he killed his whole family, he quit and came home and he sat in the car for like 6 hours. And then he went in the house and kissed his kids and put them in bed and kissed his wife and grabbed a gun and killed everybody in the house.
What in the world?
So that particular, when I heard it, that particular story, like we never.
the
like,
engineer, your
right.
face looks so disturbed.
I'm just saying, it's one of those things where when you really think about like what it takes to go in the house and kiss your kids and put them to bed and tell them that you love them and then take their life, and then when you're done, right before you kill yourself, like, dang, I wish I had the power to change all this. That we all get to that place where I will go in this job and shut this thing down for real.
That's just true.
And sometimes people do it. Like, I can't take this no more. Like, and that's something I kind of learned with being by myself, like going through bouts with depression. Like, understanding like, dang, like I could go in here and like really shoot this place up for real. But that don't really do nothing for me because I'ma still feel like this.
And you could be in jail.
And the only way to stop it is to take my own life. So that's that song. So like, me personally, can I write this and not want to take my own life? So I would listen to it and people telling me like, oh man, the song, but you don't really, it's a lot in that song. Like a lot. Like,
so when I hear you, I don't think that's why the people you mentioned were so interesting to me. I think Lupe Fiasco. I think Rhapsody. I think Talib Kweli sometimes. I think Joyner Lucas. I may even think Eminem. I don't necessarily think J. Cole when I listen to you a lot, but I feel like, but the writing is everything. Like the words is everything. So that's why I think it's dope.
All right, so we down to our last minute. So how can people get the album? Things of that magnitude.
So you can search me on the gram. Double R Music, DOUBLERMUZIK. The same thing on Apple Music and Spotify. The project is Can I Borrow a Dollar? 2018 Stories I Tell. Last week, I got a project coming out March 15th called Journey of a Dollar. That's my birthday, and I'm going up. And then I'm doing something for my daughter's birthday, February 21st. Kind of a live show called Anything for her. And we working. We just working. And I'm writing a book. And I got a podcast called Bittersweet. So I'm doing a lot of work. Talking about relationships and talking about...
Which was absolutely new to me. And you know what? I'm actually offended. I've known you since 2009. I've never seen your child. I'm offended. I just thought about that.
Hey, look, I don't even got enough time to get into it.
I'm just saying. All right, Simone, final thought. I'm just saying. I thought, wait, I've known for 11 years and I've never seen this child. Okay, final thought.
None. I encourage everybody to check it out unless you have some sort of a trigger sensitive situation, because I just think it's deep.
Yeah, if you trigger,
I don't get
listen
tired
to
of
it
deep.
backwards.
There you go.
What?
But I don't get tired
Oh
of deep.
God.
I love it. I need it. I need substance. I don't like fluff. I'm not a WAP fan, so I recommend it.
I like WAP.
I'm sure you do.
Shouts out to Cardi B for a new song. I don't love it, but hey, whatever.
like
Final thoughts, Double R?
I'm happy to be here, and shout out to y'all.
All right, well, there you have it, folks. It's always nice when the Blend family is back together, especially these two. They're annoying. They're like brother and sister. I feel like the father that has to police his kids when they get together because they just go in. This was mild. I'm very proud of y'all. This was mild today.
This was.
Yeah, this
I
was
told
light.
you I was gonna have a timer right
I'm
here and
very
just.
proud of y'all
Because
for
we ain't go
staying
into it
at
for
all.
real.
on track, which is good. That's good. All right, so next Friday, it'll probably be just Blend family again. So we will see you guys next Friday, same place, same time on the Leadership Blend Live podcast with your host, Ricardo D. Rice.